Hi, welcome back with another movie explanation. Today, I'm going to explain a romantic movie called A Dash of Love. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The film opens with a Nikki Turner, a chef working at a diner making a sandwich for one of the customers. She makes all the orders one by one. After an hour, her shift ends. She talks to one of her friends, Angela, in the restaurant and tells her today is one of her best days for the restaurant with a lot of customers. After that, her friend asks her what happened to the job she applied, and Nikki replies she didn't get the job. Her friend tells her not to worry, and she gives her a compliment saying she's the best chef she ever saw. Nikki's boss comes to her, and he talks to her for a while and consoles her. After this, Nikki goes to a bakery named Dulecci and takes her usual order of coffee. In Dulecci, she knows the woman in the reception and starts talking to her. Even she tells her that she will find a job very soon, because the diner she works in is going to get closed. She's in search of a new job. Nikki goes back to her house. She lives with Angela. Nikki is seen searching for a job on her laptop. Angela asks her why. She tells her because job hunting for being a chef isn't going all that well. She tells her that she needs a paycheck until she finds her dream job as a chef. Since she's very good with dogs, she thinks of being a dog walker. Angela explains it looks like she is giving up on her dream job. Nikki explains to her that she is not giving up. Instead, she is considering other options. Angela tells Nikki that she will introduce her to Holly Hansen, a chef Nikki is a huge fan of. In the next scene, we see Holly Hansen in a restaurant kitchen, arguing with her executive chef, Paul, who says that her casserole recipe is bland and it's not that satisfactory for the customers. She tells him that he is not following the recipe properly, but the executive chef doesn't agree with her and tells her to change the recipe. Holly tells him that she owns a restaurant and he has to do as she says. At night, Angela calls Nikki to Holly's restaurant to introduce her to Holly Hansen. Nikki goes to the restaurant and meets Angela first. She tells her to wait at the bar for a while. Nikki orders red wine. Then Angela comes to the bar and introduces Nikki to the bartender and tells him to give her what's special on today's menu. He serves her the cassoulet with red wine. Nikki says thank you and starts to eat the cassoulet. After taking one bite, she realizes that something is missing in the cassoulet. A man whose name is Paul Dulecci comes and sits beside Nikki at the bar. He tells the bartender to give him red wine. Paul talks to Nikki. He was the executive chef who argued with Holly about the cassoulet recipe. He asks her if she liked the cassoulet. She tells him that it's a little bland and it needs something to make it better. Nikki says there's no wow factor in the cassoulet, and she tells him that the executive chef should be changed. Paul feels a bit sad about it because he's the executive chef in that restaurant. He tells her that she's acting like a food critic. To this, she replies she's not a good critic, but she knows a lot about food. Paul looks upset, and Nikki asks him if she said something to him. He replies no, but he was hurt by Nikki's words. He leaves after this. Nikki waits all night until all the customers had left the restaurant. She overhears the conversation Holly and her investor had. He says no one is interested in working as her assistant and leaves. When Holly comes out of her office, Nikki finally gets to see Holly Hansen. Nikki asks Holly to appoint her as her new assistant. She tells her that she is very experienced in the restaurant industry. Holly appoints her as her new assistant. The next morning, Nikki goes to Dulecci to get a coffee. After coming out of Dulecci, she rushes to work and bumps into Paul Dulecci at the Holly restaurant. She spills her coffee on him. She apologizes to him. After a minute, Holly comes to the restaurant and asks Paul to open the door. This is when Nikki realizes that he is the executive chef in the Holly restaurant. She feels embarrassed for saying the executive chef should be changed with Paul the other night. She works the whole day in the restaurant. By the time it is night, she gets locked in the restaurant because she didn't leave the restaurant when she has to. Nikki calls Angela for help. She tells her to wait for the cleaning crew and they will open the doors for her. Nikki goes to the kitchen to prepare food because she hadn't eaten anything since the morning. Nikki makes some food for herself. Holly comes to her and tells her not to be in her kitchen ever again. After this, she smells the food Nikki prepared and asks her what she put in it. Nikki explains to her how she cooked. She offers her some food. After tasting, Holly thinks it's awesome, but she doesn't tell her. Holly tells Nikki that she was a struggling chef once and lets Nikki use the kitchen after hours. The next morning, Holly's investor calls her and tells her to increase the business or else he won't be able to fund the restaurant with low profits. Holly tells him she has a few ideas to make the restaurant popular. On the other side, Paul and Nikki talk a lot about food and become friends because their interests match. Nikki tells Angela that Paul is a nice guy and he talks to her very often. Angela seems to be surprised because Paul doesn't look like a person who could talk in such a nice way. We note that Holly gave Nikki permission to use the kitchen after hours. When Nikki cooks food, she cooks like a master chef. Holly observes how she cooks in a monitor with the help of surveillance cameras, and she notes down the unique things she does while cooking. For example, she puts pieces of chocolates on cooked meat. The next morning, Nikki asks Paul if she can hang around the restaurant on Valentine's Day. He says she can. After this, during the night, Paul makes one of the dishes in the Valentine's Day menu for Nikki to ask for her opinion. She tells him it's very good. While eating, they talk to each other. Paul asks her what her dream is. Nikki replies that she wants to open a restaurant. In the next scene, Nikki stumbles upon a menu in Holly's office and finds out that she was looking at her while she was cooking and copied all her recipes. Nikki was upset to see this. She goes home and feels sad about what Holly is doing with her recipes, and she stops working at Holly's restaurant. To distract herself from what Holly did, Nikki goes to a place where she always volunteered to cook food. Paul comes to meet her there. Nikki tells him an idea, and the idea is to open a pop-up for hot chocolate. He tells her it's a good idea. She finds a place to start a pop-up with Paul. They named the pop-up Cafe Cupid. They opened bookings for the pop-up on Valentine's Day. A lot of people book it on Valentine's Day. Nikki feels happy because of this and hugs Paul. They were about to kiss, but don't because it's unprofessional and not a good idea. Paul and his father don't talk much because he didn't want to be a baker. Nikki invites Paul's parents to their pop-up restaurant to taste the food they make on Valentine's Day. Paul's father hesitantly says yes. On Valentine's Day, customers start to come to their pop-up restaurant. While cooking, Paul and Nikki think about opening a big restaurant together other than the pop-up restaurant. In the next scene, Paul meets his parents in the pop-up restaurant, and he is upset to see his father. Paul yells at Nikki for inviting his father without asking him. Paul leaves the restaurant angrily. Holly comes to the restaurant Nikki opened and tells one of the food critics sitting there that Nikki Turner stole all her recipes. She used to be her assistant and she fired her. Holly tried to sabotage Nikki's dreams of opening a restaurant. The next morning, Nikki seems to be upset by having her name spoiled by Holly. She looks sad, but she cleans up the pop-up restaurant all by herself and goes home. In the next scene, the bartender at Holly's restaurant talks to Paul and tells him not to be mad at Nikki for inviting her father to the pop-up restaurant. After this, Paul goes to his father and talks to him. He tells him that he never wanted to be a baker and baking is not what he's interested in. Paul tells his father that he loves to cook gourmet food. He tells him that's what he's good at. His father accepts him for who he is and forgives him. In the climax, Angela sees a bad review about Cafe Cupid, saying that she stole all her recipes from Holly Hansen. Nikki reads the review and feels sad. After reading this review, she goes to Holly Hansen and tells her that she was her inspiration to be a cook, and talks to her about integrity. While Nikki was talking to Holly, her investor Henry sees it. She comes out of the restaurant and she gets a call from Paul. He tells her to meet him at the pop-up restaurant. Paul tells her that Henry, the investor of Holly's restaurant, is now investing in their new restaurant. Paul and Nikki start a restaurant. The film ends here. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to let me know how you feel about today's video in the comments down below. Stay safe